Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, and welcome to Pangolin, the Conservation Podcast, the show dedicated to exploring and amplifying the world's underappreciated conservation stories. The stories that inspire me, and I hope will inspire you too. I'm your host, Jack Baker, and today I am joined once again by the amazing Connor Davies, a member of the Chester Zoo Youth Board. This is Connor's second appearance on the show, and this time he is back to tell us all about youth governance, inclusivity and conservation, and the important role and ambitions of the Chester Zoo Youth Board. We also make sure to discuss some of his favourite unusual animals, the somewhat bizarre aardvark, and the totally mad Scrotum frog. You honestly would think I was making that up, but in fact no, that is not the case at all. Anyway, before we get distracted by that, without further ado, let's get started. And welcome back to the show. I am now joined by Connor Davies, one of the engagement and learning presenters from Bristol Zoo, who also, in his free time, if that wasn't enough to do, also is on the Chester Zoo Youth Board. We talked to him a lot last time about his role at Bristol Zoo, and so today we're going to be focusing more on the second part of that statement, the Chester Zoo Youth Board part. But yeah, before we get started, all I can say is a massive thank you, Connor, for coming back and appearing twice on the show in 2 weeks. It's a big commitment, so thank you very, very much.
You're more than welcome. It's been really great to do this, and it's just really exciting to shout about what I do both at Bristol and at Chester as well. So thank you for having me again.
Yes, thank you so much. I wondered, in case anyone hasn't listened to last week, I mentioned we talked about Bristol Zoo. I mentioned a little bit about you, but do you just want to give a brief recap, introduction? Who are you? Why are you here, basically? One, and maybe just a little bit about what we talked about last time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I, as you mentioned, I'm learning and engagement. No, engagement and learning presenter. No, I've got it wrong. I'm an.
I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna leave this in for the audience. We have been trying to say the job title correctly into this microphone so many times, and I'm not ashamed of it anymore. I'm just gonna go with it. Connor, please take back over. Just say your job role and what you were doing.
So I'm an engagement and learning officer. No, engagement and learning presenter at Bristol Zoo. Mm-hmm. And so last week we spoke a little bit about kind of what that involves, and also my pathway to get there, which mainly involved quite a lot of volunteering with the society, or Bristol Zoological Society first, and kind of why I feel like that was a really important part of my journey, and kind of why it was really beneficial to me.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect introduction, and kind of, yeah, so I wonder, this kind of whole series of interviews has been all about youth engagement and kind of getting people involved. And the first part was about kind of youth volunteering and kind of to first get involved in conservation. And this second part is about kind of empowering youth and kind of taking their viewpoints and what they can do and what they bring to the table really, really seriously. And I think you kind of perfectly embody that with your role on the Chester Zoo Youth Board. So I was wondering, first of all, could you just tell us maybe a little bit about Chester Zoo and the Youth Board itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So for anyone that hasn't heard of Chester Zoo or hasn't listened to the launch 2 episodes of Rizoo, the Zoo Review podcast. See, I'm getting good at this podcast, Lark. We're one of the biggest zoos in the UK. We kind of get around about 2 million visitors every year. And we have an incredible collection of animals. I think it numbers around about 21,000 individual animals at the moment, of hundreds of species, ranging from things like Asian elephants down to leafcutter ants and kind of everything in between, basically. And we're predominantly a conservation charity, so we hold that collection of animals, but our main focus is conservation, so keeping those animals to empower people and kind of educate them about those animals and the threats they face in the wild. But also we run 66 different conservation projects all around the world, working with local people and local organisations to kind of actually do on the ground conservation work that helps these species out where they would live in the wild, and to improve those habitats, and make conditions out there a lot more viable and a lot more suited for the animals that live there. So we're kind of doing a load of work across the world to kind of prevent extinction. And as part of that, we created the Chester Zoo Youth Board. And the reason that was set up was because the staff at the zoo and the trustees recognised that there wasn't a lot of engagement from people in the kind of 12 to 25-year-old age group. And they recognised that that was a gap in their knowledge, and that they were not necessarily the best people to kind of address those issues or to even realise what those issues were that were preventing the engagement from this age group. And so they decided to recruit for a youth board, and it's our role as part of that to address issues that are facing young people and to kind of increase their awareness of, engagement with, and kind of visitation to the zoo and things like that. And I think that's kind of what it started as, and it's since we've started, it's got a bit bigger, and kind of our remit has grown into kind of making sure that young people feel really represented within the conservation sector and kind of within the movement as a whole, and to make sure that we actually have this voice and we can be this kind of like wave of change and really feel like our views are taken seriously, which I think has been quite lacking in the sector for quite a long time.
Yeah, and that it's really important, it's really fascinating, and it's so encouraging to see an organisation as big as Chester Zoo kind of taking this stand and organising this and trying to kind of involve people to kind of get this engagement. And that's kind of the reason I invited you to be on the podcast is I think it is so important and underrepresented and something that needs to be talked about. So I think, yes, a really encouraging, really good, really interesting step, and it leaves us so much to talk about. I have so many questions just about Chester, because I if you've not listened to the Rizoo, which you very kindly promoted, we did talk, me and Jodie, for 2 hours, and during that time we probably came up with more questions than we actually answered, but so I could just sit and ask you all those, but we won't do that today. What we will do is talk about the youth board. And I guess my first question about that is, you kind of gave us a brief rundown there, but what is it that you do on the board? What's your kind of specific role, and maybe what are some of the other roles that are going on round about you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of the wider role as a whole, rather than kind of me specifically, is we kind of all do a little bit of everything. So there are 13 of us. No, there's not. There's 12 of us now. So there is 12 of us, and we're focused on things that get young people engaged, whether that be from within the zoo, getting them through the gates and doing things on site that'll engage them, but also increasingly, especially over the past couple of years, we've been doing lots of virtual things and trying to increase our engagement with young people virtually and online as well. And so kind of everything that we do is within that, like with that in mind. So kind of how do we represent the views of young people and make sure that the zoo, who may not have been aware of them before, are kind of taking those seriously and kind of moving forwards on those. But also, how do we like get them involved in it, like help them develop as well. And so as part of that, my role is external reach co-lead. So kind of I, alongside Jessica, who's the other co-lead, we're kind of in charge of networking and kind of working together with other conservation organisations, especially those that are youth-led. So we've worked with some really cool groups such as Reserva, the Youth Land Trust. We've also did a little partnership with Solution Search, which is run by RARE, which is a behaviour change charity working out from America. And so kind of grouping together like youth-led organisations that are pushing to have these voices of young people taken seriously, and trying to kind of advance that movement within the sector, and kind of encourage people, like especially young people, to make their voices known and to kind of take that step further and pursue it, because I think it's really easy to feel that, oh, we're young, nobody takes us seriously, there's not much we can actually do, and we're kind of trying to overcome that perception and actually show that, you know what, if organisations are willing to open themselves up to hearing those voices and to taking those voices seriously, it can be a really, really meaningful thing, and a really can bring really tangible benefits to organisations as well as the young people that they're inviting in as well. And so that's my biggest passion within the youth board, is kind of driving forward that youth governance, a youth-led movement, and hoping to embed that within other organisations.
That's really, really interesting. I think especially when you're kind of talking about this 12 to 25 age range that you were trying to engage in, because I think sometimes if you think about the people who are always appearing on the news talking about climate activism and doing these things, a lot of them are falling into that age bracket. Really, really interesting and really, really encouraging and fascinating, actually. And yes, I wondered, kind of, you talked a lot about youth governance, I suppose, and I wondered what we kind of, I didn't ask you to prepare for this. This might be a hard one, but I feel like you'll have a very set answer in your mind. But like, what would be your kind of ideal picture of youth governance? What would you want that to look like if you were in your role? What are you pushing for?
Yeah, so it's a difficult one, because I think everyone has a kind of different perception of what the word governance means. In kind of the way that we use it, it's effectively, when you're saying youth governance, you're saying anything that allows young people to be part of the decision making. Okay. So no matter what level that's kind of at, but that's doing it in a meaningful way. So without kind of inviting young people, taking a picture with them and saying we've included young people, but they're not actually asking them to feed in or actioning anything that they suggest. Just kind of using it almost in a tokenistic way to kind of get the youth vote, or to, you know, appear like you're doing loads of work with young people when actually you've invited them along for a photo opportunity and aren't really considering them at all. So it's something that is really meaningful, where the kind of young people have an equal stake in it as the staff members, or the kind of people with more of a stake. So maybe like the trustees, if you're kind of within a charitable organisation such as Chester. So it's, yeah, my idea of youth governance is where young people can go in and they can make an action something, and it's almost co-led between the staff and the young people. So obviously you can't expect young people to go in and just do it all themselves, because the way it runs at Chester is that we're volunteers. So it's not necessarily appropriate that we do absolutely everything. We are supported quite a lot by the staff there, but it is always a 50-50 split, if not kind of more youth voice and staff voice, because it's where a lot of the things we do. So for example, the Youth Symposium, which is where we actually met when you came down to present about this podcast, that was an idea that was presented by us on the youth board, and then led by us on the day, kind of curated by us, but all of the logistics, so things like the venue hire, the kind of the actual invitations to speakers and things like that all came from the staff. So it was a shared project, but a lot of the kind of deeper thinking behind it was youth led. So it's a really hard balance to get right a lot of the time, but that's kind of what I think of when we talk about youth governance, as something that involves youth in a meaningful way at quite a high level, and is, you know, really tangible in the way that they involve youth, and not tokenistic, not, you know, kind of manipulative, which is what you can get kind of even at the bottom levels, and yeah, just kind of treats young people on a level footing with the people working within that organisation.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I would have understood it as well, and I think it's so important, and something that I really kind of like the idea of, and I kind of agree with wholeheartedly that more organizations need to be doing this and standing up and saying, listen, like, holding their hands up and saying, we don't know what like these people want, and we don't know, and sometimes the best ideas come from the people you don't necessarily, you maybe have been underestimated or maybe haven't been included. They will have different takes on things, and I think it's so important and so inspiring and interesting. And yes, mentioning the Youth Symposium, we'll just do a brief interlude about that, because that was fascinating and fantastic. And I'm sure we'll come back to it. I was going to ask about achievements in a moment, but yes, I met Connor at the Youth Symposium when I was presenting, I've talked about it on several episodes, but I just wanted to take a moment to say that was fantastic and really good. And I'll compliment you more probably when we get to it. But yes, to talking about achievements. But yeah, really, really fantastic organisation, bringing people in and doing really good things. But before we inflate your ego too much, what I wanted to ask was about kind of your pre-existing relationship with Chester. You talked about how you kind of want to bring people in and engage people, but before you were on the youth board, what was your did you have a relationship? Were you interested, or was it just an advert you kind of saw and it came out of the blue and was like, oh, maybe I'll apply for that? What was the relationship and process like that there? Yeah, that made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So I almost had a pre-existing relationship with Chester in that it was my big childhood zoo. It wasn't the closest to me when I was a child, but it was always a special zoo trip. You know, it was always it takes a little bit longer to get there, so it's a bit more of a treat. I've been going there for kind of as long as I can remember, so it's always been I think it's always been my favourite. It's always been kind of, I think across the zoo sector it's gold standard. You know, it is absolutely incredible, and the work there is just absolutely brilliant. So I was always really invested in kind of within my plans for my career going, I want to work in a zoo. I think the end goal has always been, I want to end up at Chester. But so it was completely by chance that I saw this come up because I was stalking the jobs page on Chester Zoo. I'm doing my kind of weekly trawl through the zoo jobs. This was at the tail end of 2019, and I saw this advert pop up. And I thought, this sounds really cool. And so I just kind of on a whim, because I live down in Bristol, so they were asking for people that lived within an hour travel time of Chester, which Bristol still absolutely not within an hour travel time of Chester.
If you
fly, yeah. But yeah, so I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit cheeky. I put down my parents' address, which still isn't within an hour, but it's much closer than my actual address. And kind of went, I don't think they're going to pick me. I don't think this is actually going to happen, but I might as well put myself out there and just apply on a whim. And then, somehow got in. So it was, I kind of do have a pre-existing relationship, but not a massively tangible one. It was just kind of always on my radar as a really good exemplar of good modern zoos. And so I kind of jumped at the chance to join.
That's fascinating, and I feel like I would have been doing the same. And I really hope if anyone's listening who picked you for the youth board and you didn't know that you scammed the application process, that's fine. I'm gonna put next time they go out for applications, my gran has a caravan in Wales, and that's probably within an hour's distance. So catch my application coming in next time. No, but that's fascinating, and it's I was the same when I was younger, kind of. When we went down to visit that caravan, it was kind of the special trip, and it was like this, like one of those things that I'm like, this is the best. It's the best. And only as a grown up do I realize, 24. I'm 24. Only as kind of I get older, I realize how much my parents must have committed to driving me there and seeing all these things. So yes, it completely makes sense why you would want to be on the board and why you would kind of want to be involved in that capacity, because it's just fantastic.
Just to kind of jump back in, actually, I kind of hold my hands up, and I've admitted this to the team at the youth board over the past few months, and that I started it because I was like, this is a way in, this is where I want to work. At that point I still wasn't working in conservation, I was working in visitor experience, but kind of within an attraction that wasn't conservation based. And so I kind of saw it as this is a way in, this is a way to get a job. And looking back at it now, that was kind of the wrong way to look at it, but it led me to this. So it kind of it was, now it's not, I see it as a value of itself now, but kind of when I started, I saw it as a way to get something else, as a way to kind of progress. And now only since actually being on the board have I seen kind of the value that the board brings, and actually that position brings opportunities that a job at Chester wouldn't be able to. And so kind of within its own right, it is a really incredible opportunity and really incredible role. But the kind of reason I applied wasn't necessarily the reason I'm still on the board.
Mm-hmm.
But I think is a really important point, kind of going back to kind of what we mentioned a little bit last week, talking about kind of taking opportunities that are handed to you, or that kind of present themselves. Is I took this opportunity as one thing, as in a pathway to a career in conservation, and actually it has turned out to be something completely different, which I love even more, and which has given me even more wonderful opportunities that kind of I didn't necessarily expect when I kind of went for it. So yeah, just another kind of shout out for just take whatever or apply for whatever you see, even if it's not necessarily kind of what you expect it to be or what you were looking for. It's always worth putting yourself out there and just trying to kind of, make that happen, or kind of jump at something that's maybe not exactly what you planned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that, actually, and kind of, because yeah, I think sometimes the best opportunities and the best things you do in your entire life are not the things that you think they're gonna be. They're gonna be like just these, I'll just apply for this, and if I get it, I'm not whatever, this, that, or the next thing. But then you get it, and actually it helps you grow, and it helps open your worldview and your mind to all of these different things. Because the way that you spoke about youth governance, you'd think it was a passion you'd had for your whole life. So it just goes to show that, like, yes, you should apply for these like different things that as they come up and when they come up, so that yeah, just make the most of it. It's really, really interesting, fascinating, and a really good message, I think, to be sending out to people. Yeah, and I like the honesty about it, because I think there's some people who would maybe say, no, I've always wanted to do this, and it's good to hear about the journey that people go through to get to that point as well. I suppose being in that role now and kind of loving it as much as you do, and having grown into it and grown through it, I wondered, you must have had some big achievements. You must feel like you've succeeded a lot within the role and done lots of things. So what are some of your biggest achievements within the role on the youth board?
Yeah, so I think we've already mentioned it a little bit, so I'll probably lead with kind of our most recent big achievement, which was the Youth Symposium, which we hosted at Chester Zoo in November 2021, so kind of just only a few months ago now. And I think hopefully you'll agree that it was just this really incredible weekend. So we hosted a full 2 days of almost like a conference, where we had a lot of young speakers talking about kind of varying different degrees, kind of to like various different things around conservation, whether that's like the work that they're doing to embed young people within conservation, or whether it's how they've taken a novel approach to communicating conservation. And we had some really, really incredible young speakers, some incredible keynote speakers as well. And I think all round it was just an excellent opportunity for young people to go and network and to chat to people that were doing the jobs that maybe they wanted to do. And it was an opportunity for them to kind of network around the career that they want to get into, or it's a way for organisations to come and develop. So I know we had a few other zoological organisations attend that weekend to kind of pick up tips and see how the youth board was working, in the aim of maybe exploring something similar kind of further down the line with their organisations, which, I mean, that was just the absolute gold dust for me, because kind of given my passions and what we've spoken about, is that the idea that other organisations want to come along and, take us as an example of what they want to do and embed that within themselves, that's exactly what we're aiming for. But I think just for everyone who attended, it was this really incredible, inspiring, really empowering weekend. I just think it was really special.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in and give you some more compliments. I was presenting, so I didn't have all the stress of like you were running around like a headless chicken the whole day. It looked like, so I did not have any of the stress of that. So I just got to go and appreciate it from an outsider's perspective. And I have to admit, when I applied, I was like, I'm not sure what I've signed up for. Maybe I've like gone in over my depth, and like I was quite nervous and whatever. And then I got there, and everyone was so nice, everyone was so engaged, everyone was so interested in what I had to say and what everyone else had to say. You were the first person I think I spoke to, a member of the youth board, and you recognised me, which I was like, oh, I'm a celebrity, so that was nice. So it was just like, it was a nice, really empowering, and one of those things that like me and my friend co-host Jodie wandered around Chester the day before, and then we were kind of going to the youth board the next day, and we were kind of already hyped up after just walking around Chester, and then we were travelling home afterwards, and it was like, this was just the best, most empowering, like enlightening, fascinating, inspiring thing that we've been to. And you know that type of happiness you get where you like, there's some happiness where you're like, oh, I'm just kind of smiling or whatever. That's chill happiness. But there's like that happiness you like feel in your bones of like, this was just great. Like, and you can't quite explain why it was great, but you're like, I'm just really happy. And like, we drove home that night, and the drive from Chester to back to Dunfermline where we stayed was about 4.5, 5 hours because we had to stop for dinner. But it was like the whole way I was like, I wasn't tired. I'd been up since like 7 a.m. but I wasn't tired, like kept going. Was just fascinating, fantastic, wonderful, great, amazing, show-stopping, incredible. And so you should be, yes, very proud of that achievement. And any of the other youth board members who are listening, thank you very much. And this is not just a ploy for me to come back next year. I will come back next year, but like, yeah, it was so fantastic, and thank you all so much for doing it.
Can we use that on the promo for next year's? Can we use it? It made me so happy I felt it in my bones. I feel like that's a good quote to lead with on the PR stuff for next year. And I think it just, even deeper than that as well, it represented a real change in the way that Chester Zoo as an organisation runs events, because it was, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, it was completely co-led between the kind of subset of the youth board who were kind of planning it in advance, the youth board on the day who came in, helped out, and made it a roaring success, and all of the staff that were there on the day and in the lead up, kind of handling all the logistics, all the photography, all the technology, because we recorded all the keynote speakers. Cheeky little plug, if they are all up on the Chester Zoo website, so if you want to go and listen to any of the keynote speakers we had, who were all absolutely amazing, those are available and out there. But all of that kind of behind the scenes work that realistically the youth board don't have time to kind of do, or necessarily the exact expertise and things like that, that was just completely invaluable. And to do it as such a collaborative project was really, really wonderful, and like a big switch from how these things kind of normally run. And
yeah, it was fantastic. It was fascinating, and yes, can't say enough good things about it. I wondered, as someone who kind of was there and you were in the organisation, like, did you feel as like empowered afterwards as some of the speakers clearly did? Did you feel like when you went away you were kind of extra inspired about what you've been doing and organising?
Oh, absolutely. I think we were all absolutely exhausted. We kind of, as soon as the last person left the venue on that evening, we were just like absolutely shattered. But we all felt that it was just such a roaring success, and kind of it just felt incredibly validating that this thing we worked for, that we'd all have this passion for kind of involving these young people and kind of getting them engaged. We'd pulled off a really clear example of that, and I think it works really well in that it's a clear example of, we don't know how, like, it was the first big event we'd ever done, so we didn't know how it was going to go, whether people would turn up, whether it was, something that would actually get people along, or whether it was something that was actually worth pursuing. And it just kind of really gave us that clear, concise evidence that, like, people want this. There's a desire for this out there. There is a great need for ways to engage young people and to kind of keep them involved and engaged within this sector that's incredibly difficult to get into. And just to hear that everyone had a great time and left feeling empowered, or, left with this kind of even more intense desire to get involved and to help, was absolutely incredible. And all the feedback we've had has been really, really wonderful. So we're really excited to kind of make that an ongoing thing, hopefully, and run another one this year, and to kind of learn from things that could have gone better or could have been done differently as well, and to kind of hold our hands up and say, we didn't get it completely perfect. Where can we make changes to make it a more inclusive, a more accessible, or, provide more of what people want to see? Because that's kind of information we just didn't have before we went into it. But now we've got that information, we can only build on it, and I think it's only going to get bigger and better from here.
Yeah. Would one of those changes be the way that you introduced me for my presentation? Because I met this is the first thing I mentioned to Connor today when we met. A hilarious introduction by a very, very tired Connor was, "Here's Jack." I was like, "Okay, great." Like,
okay, maybe I'll work on getting some training. Maybe we can do that. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I messed up your job role about 6 times before we started recording today. So
I think we're even. Yeah.
But no, fantastic. And yes, I wouldn't have said there was much room for improvement. But I will see you in November because I'll be back. Even though I'll be 25 by then, so I'll be right on the cusp of being not young. But it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I'll fake it till I make it. I'll start doing like Benjamin buttoning or something just to get in. But yes, it was fascinating and incredible. I don't want to move on from the symposium, but I feel like what are the other things that you've been up, like that obviously is the highlight probably of your calendar, but is there any other things, like what are the other benefits of the youth board? What other smaller perhaps projects have you been working on?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a project that's equal in size, but it's a lot more behind the scenes. I think it's quite unique in it's not necessarily what the youth board was taken on for, in that we've been doing a lot of work. We've kind of got a subcommittee within the youth board that looks at diversity and inclusion. And so how can we make the zoo site itself, but also the communications, the image of the zoo much more inclusive and accessible? And that's some really, really important work that we've been doing within the youth board. And so we've been kind of doing accessibility walkabouts, so physically walking around the zoo site and saying, how can we make this better for people that have disabilities, or for people that have mobility issues, sensory processing issues, things like that, and kind of looking for things that we aren't necessarily doing as best as we can, because I mean you've been it's a huge site, and so for people that don't have the best mobility, or get excessive fatigue and things like that, it can be quite a challenging site to navigate. So we've been doing a lot of work, and our team on that have been doing loads of work to kind of work around that and see how we can make everything we do just a bit more inclusive, and kind of make sure that we're catering to everyone, and showcasing that everyone is welcome and everyone can kind of have that impact as well. And that's some really important work that we've been doing. So we've been taking a paper of advice changes to the board of trustees, and we're kind of working through that at the moment and trying to implement some of those. The zoo's already acting on some of the things we highlighted in the accessibility walkthroughs, and so we're already seeing tangible change being made from the suggestions that are coming from the youth board, which is absolutely brilliant. And as I said, I think that wasn't necessarily within the scope or within the remit of what the zoo necessarily thought the youth board would be. So, but it's something that we came in, we said, this is really, really important to young people, and it's not only to young people, it is also going to open the zoo up for a wider range of ages as well, and it's going to improve it for everyone. But specifically young people really, really care about this issue, so we're going to look into it, we're going to see what we can do, and we're going to try and push forward that change. And I think we're starting to see the outcomes of that, and it is really, really incredible. And it's an ongoing piece of work that we have. So we've made that a permanent subcommittee within the board. So even when all of us are no longer on the youth board, even though I don't want to think about that just yet, when the new recruits come in and kind of it's a fresh board, that will still be a running item on the agenda, and that will still be a committee that is always focused on that. And I think that's some really, really important work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because I think it goes beyond, like, for me personally, conservation should be and must be accessible to everyone, and whether it be young people, whether it be people who have kind of some kind of physical disability, or whether it's kind of a member of the LGBTQ plus community, or if it's kind of doing a racial justice report or some kind of examination of your organization, all of these things add up and make a difference to everybody. And I think, yes, you're right, young people are more in tune with these issues, and having a board that brings these kind of things, like you're working on with the kind of making it more accessible, kind of helps and benefits, even if perhaps the older generation wouldn't have thought about it. It benefits them, it benefits everyone. And so it's something really important, and making conservation accessible in a way Yeah, it's so fantastic, and it's an amazing thing to hear that beyond kind of youth inclusion, you're looking into other ways to be inclusive and make the zoo. Because yes, it's a huge site. Like me and Jodie were running round by the end of it, and so we didn't have any kind of challenges in front of us. But for somebody who, yes, yeah, and even for people, yeah, just really, yeah, great work. Like fast, like I like yes. Yes, 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 yes. I can't even think of more. Yes, I was trying to be inspirational, but I'm just gonna say yes. That's fantastic, and I couldn't applaud that more. I mean, I guess those are two fairly major projects. But is there anything else before we move on? Is there any other projects that you want to highlight, or anything else you wanted to kind of talk about in terms of kind of achievements that you've been up to?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of the one of the kind of big undercurrents as well is kind of looking at kind of a couple of things we've touched on already. So things like, how do we provide young people with the resources they need to kind of get into a career in conservation? Because it is a notoriously difficult sector to get into. So we've helped kind of shape Chester Zoo's careers in conservation kind of festival. So they run it. We ran it as a kind of trial last year. We're running it again this year as a week-long event to kind of showcase not just the zookeepers, not just the zoo communicators, things like that, even people in fundraising, the marketing teams, security, like places like that, in that there is no one way to be a conservationist. There's no one way to like work in a zoo. You don't have to go and be a zookeeper. You can go and do something that you're incredibly passionate about, even that's not necessarily just about being close to the animals, but you can do it in a way that has this huge tangible benefit for conservation, and kind of just highlighting the huge range of roles. Because if someone goes, oh, actually, I can't be a conservationist because, I'm not strong enough to do all the work of a zookeeper, or I'm not confident enough to go and talk to people every day about it. That's not necessarily something you have to do. There is a role out there within a zoo that will suit you. And kind of highlighting that, which is, I think, is really important, because it is only the ones that are seen as the most glamorous that get all the airtime, and kind of it's what people expect if you work at a zoo. I say glamorous. Zookeeping is very much not the most glamorous.
Maybe not.
Yeah, but like that's kind of the one that gets all the press and all the kind of attention. That every time I tell someone I work at a zoo, they go, "Oh, what animals do you look after?" I'm like, actually, no, that's not. That's not what happens. That's not exactly my role. And so, kind of highlighting those is a really important one. And also, kind of going back to youth governance, the kind of undercurrent that my kind of like theme and thread of work is to help those other organisations set up youth boards, and to kind of find a way to embed the views of young people within their decision making. But I feel like we might touch on that again a little bit later. But that's kind of a couple of the big threads that are running through underneath everything we do as well. And those are kind of a couple of our big focuses.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And I think really, really interesting. Clearly having youth involved can achieve a lot, because you must be very, very busy all the time doing these things. And so I kind of wondered then, and you've kind of talked about these threads and maybe hinted in previous answers about kind of what you want to see going forward into the future. And I wondered, just to kind of shift completely into that conversation now, what are kind of your big aspirations? You're clearly very passionate about youth governance and the board and all of this. What would be your ideal picture for the future of youth governance, maybe within Chester, wider, whatever it is? What would that be for you?
I think starting within Chester, I want youth governance to include more. In that, as we're set up as the Chester Zoo Youth Board, we're 12 of us aged 18 to 25. I'd love us to go a bit younger and include people from 12 upwards, even younger. The only reason that we haven't done that is because of the safeguarding issues and things like that, and you've got to be really careful. And so we need to kind of find an appropriate way to include those voices. So maybe inviting them to be part of the full youth board wasn't an appropriate way to do that, but kind of we're exploring the idea of including focus groups or action groups and things like that, and inviting those young people and engaging with those people of a younger age that would absolutely love to have their voices heard and love to be part of that, but maybe in a slightly more managed way, and a way that's kind of more appropriate with all the safeguarding concerns and kind of all of that. So that's something that we're really passionate about, kind of opening it up to even more people. Because I think it goes back to that thing of, we were talking about inclusivity. I think it's really important to include as many people as you can. Like, you're never going to make a conversation worse by including more voices. I think that is the kind of key message, is that you can only make it better the more people you include, and the more different voices that you actually talk to. It's only going to enhance whatever you're doing. In terms of on the wider scale, I would absolutely love it for more organisations to set up youth boards, or no matter what they call it, because the youth board, I've heard youth board, I've heard direction board, I've heard kind of young trustees. There are kind of a load of different ways to embed that. So like the youth board aren't technically young trustees because we don't invest as much as trustees do. So it's kind of, there are a lot of nuances, but no matter how embedding young people into that decision making happens, I'd love for more organisations to take it on board, and especially zoos. So like, if we got a load of more zoos taking on youth boards, like we're talking long term, my view would be to have, as we've got BIASA, which is the British Irish Association of Zoos and Aquaria, they've got their kind of committees. I'd love to have a youth committee as part of that, and to kind of have representatives from these youth boards at all these different zoos as part of that, and kind of really embed that within this wider organisation that oversees all these individual organisations, to kind of really embed it within that culture of zoos, zoological institutions, and kind of conservation in that style. I think that is, if I had one kind of large-scale dream for the future, I think that is it. A model of youth engagement across the UK and zoos that is modelled from the top down, so that you have, even at the highest levels, you've got the perspective of youth being heard, being listened to, and being implemented, and then that feeds down into all the other zoos, and they can support each other to set it up, which is one thing that I'm really, really grateful for, in that by being kind of the first major zoo that has a youth board, we've kind of become an example that people can look to, and we have requests from other organisations that ask us to like talk to them and say, like, just talk about the logistics and kind of the realities of setting up a youth board and how you make it work, and you know what not to do, what lessons we learned from what we did wrong. And we're the first to admit that we didn't get it all right the first time. I think there's real value in that, and as a result of that, it feels like we are really like making headway in helping other organisations set that up. So it feels like that big, large scale dream might not be as far away as we think, which is incredibly exciting.
Yeah, because it's almost like if you tip this the biggest domino, which is Chester. Like I work for Edinburgh, and I'm still going to be the first to hold my hands up and say Chester is probably the leader of zoos in the UK. It's the one that people think of, and so to tip the biggest domino and kind of push it over and kind of have this start the ball rolling, I think there is a huge chance for progress and for things to move forward and for things to be, yes, even better, hopefully quite quickly. But it is something that, if it does take time, I think the important thing to recognise is that we will not be young forever, and people who are listening who don't necessarily fall into the age group of 12 to 25 or whatever it is, you don't have to stop fighting for youth representation just because you fall out of the group of youth representation. So I think, yeah, it's something that, even if it does take time, it's something that we will probably keep shouting about. And hopefully anyone who's listening to this who is older can start shouting about now to kind of keep that momentum going. And yeah, we're visiting Edinburgh tomorrow, so I don't know if this is a complete under kind of the radar scam for you to get in and try and find our CEO and be like, have a youth board. But if it is, I'll support you in that. So yes, it's fantastic, and yeah, really, really interesting. I keep saying things are interesting and important. I need to think of two better words, or just different words, but they are all so interesting and so important, and it's such a nice and important, amazing vision to have. So yes, thank you for sharing it. I don't know, I was going to ask more follow-up questions, but you gave such a nice answer. I'm like, I feel like everything has been included. Was there anything else you wanted to say, or do you think that's kind of covers everything?
Just trying to look at my notes and see if I've got anything else down.
This is usually when people spiral. When I say, "Have you got anything else?" That's when it goes badly downhill. So if you don't, it's no problem.
No, I think it's kind of important to talk about why it's so important that young people be included. I think at the symposium, Joe Wilkins from Reserva, who I mentioned earlier, touched on this really, really well, and he said, "Don't use the argument to include young people that youth are the future, because it is so much more than that. It is young people have so many more tangible benefits that they can bring themselves, and that they've got skills that people of older generations don't have. Maybe things like social media, different ideas, different perspectives. There are already like so many different perspectives between the older generations and younger generations. And I might be making some kind of sweeping generalizations here, and obviously it won't apply to every single old person or older person. But like young people are so conscientious and so keen to kind of hold their hands up and say, hang on, maybe actually the way we're doing this isn't the best. And I think they're a lot more likely to kind of admit that and to look to steer and correct themselves. And it is, if you're making an argument for including young people, don't just do it because we're the future, because we're the ones that are going to have to deal with this. Do it because there is real benefits that we can bring to the table. I think it's really easy to kind of overlook young people and write them off as, oh, they don't have enough experience, they don't know the ways of the world, they've never done this before. Like all of us on the Chester Youth Board, none of us had been on a board before. Some of us had more experience than others of things like minutes and agendas and how to kind of run an official meeting, but none of us had been on anything like a board before. And look at what we've achieved. There isn't a ground to kind of reject people or to nullify what they can contribute just because they don't have that experience. It's about providing that support and providing, that support and that backbone, and enabling and developing young people to kind of be able to go out there and do that. And I think hopefully the youth board will survive as this really core example of what young people can do when they're given the platform, they're given the support, and they're allowed to have that voice heard. And hopefully it's going to be an agent of change, and it's going to be a change for the good as well. Hopefully it's going to see a lot of change over the next few years within the zoo sector. That's what I hope, at least.
Yes. I think it will, and I think it is important, and hopefully by the time we get to November, and then at the next Youth Symposium, if that is even where it lands, we'll have even more progress to report on and all of these things. Maybe we should do that. I'm already setting you up for an episode 3 here, but I'm like, in November, when I come down to the inevitable next Youth Symposium, we can record then and check in on all these progress. Obviously, that's not much time, so get cracking on all your things. Fix all these problems now. No, but still fascinating and fantastic, and yeah, brilliant. And you didn't spiral like some people do when I say, more information, please. So that was excellent. You still remained eloquent and fantastic. And I guess kind of that almost brings us to the end of our conversation, our 2-episode epic. But what I wanted to ask, there was a couple things that we kind of asked similar questions last time, and I'm going to ask them again now, that kind of they shift the lane slightly, because they're talking more about an underrepresented species and some advice. But you're on pangolin, so you have to talk about something underrepresented. And so the first of my questions that I ask everyone is, at Chester Zoo, when people visit, what is the animal that is underappreciated, that people don't look at, that maybe walk past, that they maybe bypass, that you think should have a spotlight shone on it, that you would really like to highlight? Which unusual animal would it be?
I think the latest one is the Lake Titicaca frog. Again, I've gone rogue. And Felix from the Youth Board is going to be really happy with this, because he's got a real thing about mammal bias and kind of the charismatic megafauna always getting the attention. So I want to highlight the frog that you'll find in Spirit of the Jaguar. It's really unfortunately nicknamed the Scrotum frog.
I saw that.
It's amazing. They're so cool. I love them.
What made me laugh is that my sister, before I was going down to Chester, she was like on your Instagram and she was like, Jack, why are they advertising scrotums? And I was like, what? What are you talking about? Like, and then you see the frog. So yes, Google a picture. Be very specific what you Google, and Google a picture of them, because they're interesting things. Please tell us more. I jumped in there, but yeah.
To be fair, I don't actually know that much about them at all. I've kind of thrown myself in a hole there. They're just really, really cool, and they're really endangered, and they're absolutely amazing. But I'm also going to go rogue and just suggest a second species as well, because I feel like it'd be really remiss of me not to highlight it. It's going to be the aardvark. I know, I'm going to go for a mammal because I feel like I have to. But
sorry, Felix.
But I don't know if I can call it underrepresented anymore because of the publicity it's got over the past few weeks. But we've just had an aardvark calf born. It's been announced today that she's a female. She's called Dobby. She is, I mean, it kind of fits with the theme because she also looks a little bit like a scrotum, I guess, to be fair.
We've taken a turn.
This has become a very different podcast, but she is absolutely adorable. It's the first calf that we've had born in 90 years, in the entire time that we've kept Aardvark. And so I've just got to shout out a little mention to her because she is absolutely incredible.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it gives me an opportunity to mention my love for aardvark. They're something that I did not know a lot about until I did my MSc. And when I did it, I was tasked with capturing one on a camera trap. And obviously I couldn't go to Namibia because good old COVID, stepped in and stopped me from going. But they kind of gave us this instruction to be like, what we'll do is you give us where you would like your camera trap placed. You tell us the kind of location and we'll place it. And I was meant to capture an aardvark. So I was like, perfect. I'm going to do this, that, and the next thing. And they set up the camera trap. I got photos of zebra, I got photos of oryx, I got photos of giraffe and all sorts of other wonderful creatures, but not an aardvark. However, they were very kind to twist the knife and tell me that on the opposite side of the termite mound from where they were taking their pictures, the camera trap was placed, there was digging holes of an aardvark, which was wonderful and lovely and fantastic to hear. So I did have this kind of ongoing bitter relationship with aardvarks until I visited Chester and saw them in real life. And I have now fallen officially in love. They are so they're just bizarre, but they're fascinating and weird looking and amazing and scrotum-like, but that doesn't matter. We're not going to hold that against them. They are fantastic. And yes, I would recommend again Googling to see little Dobby because so cute. And one of those conservation stories that has transcended the conservation community. It has gone far beyond it because I've had everyone being like, have you seen this? And I'm like, yes, I have. And it's always like, it's frustrating because it's like, that's my thing. I was meant to tell you about that. What? So it's one of those ones that once you get past the initial like, it's really nice to hear that that's a story that's kind of gone so far and done so many things. And two excellent choices, I feel. So yes, you've answered my core questions now, and highlighted some strange things, talked about some very important things. And my last question, of course, as always, is if someone's listened to this, is feeling inspired about anything we've talked about today, what would your last piece of advice, what would you want to leave them with as something to think about or something to do or whatever it may be, what would your last piece of advice be for them?
I think my last piece of advice is kind of whatever it is that you're passionate about, whatever it is that you do all the time or you want to do all the time, if you want to help conservation, just find a way to do that in a way that helps. So it goes back to what I was saying, there is no one way to be a conservationist. You don't have to work within a zoo or even within a conservation organisation. If you're just an incredible artist, go out there and create some art, sell it for a conservation charity, or ask if, a charity like that needs a mural or something, or is there any way you can contribute using those skills and the talents and those passions that you already have? Kind of find a way to take what you love and apply it to conservation, because I think that is the going to be the most valuable way that you can help. And if you see something around you, an organisation that isn't doing right by young people or isn't including young people, even if they haven't got something like a youth board set up, even if they haven't got any way of young people like feeding into their processing and their working, go out there and inquire, try and set one up, try and make your voice heard, because I think it is only going to get better from here. It's only going to be like young people are only going to be taken more seriously from here on out, I hope, at least. And I think it's going to be really, really valuable for young people putting themselves out there and trying to get that heard. It doesn't mean you're having to go and kind of write to politicians or anything like that. It could be just setting up a group at your local park to kind of, like a young people action group, to kind of help make that better for the people in the neighbourhood, or anything like that. Just kind of find a way to make your voice heard in a way that works for you, that you're comfortable with, and that, you know, addresses something that you're passionate about, and something that you feel needs change. I think that's kind of my biggest piece of advice, is just whatever you want to do, find a way that fits with you, with your life, with your commitments, and just find a way to go out and do it, even if that's not necessarily the way that you expected you might contribute.
That was fantastic. I feel like if you're not feeling inspired by this point, you're doing something wrong, because this has just been the best. And like, I've sat here the whole time being like, yes. Like, I feel like this is a TED Talk if it was condensed to less than an hour. But still fascinating and great advice, great species, great stories, great work that you're doing. And I can't thank you enough for, taking the time to record with me today. We've recorded 2 episodes in the space of a few hours. If you haven't listened to the last one, please go back and listen to it, because there was more great stories there. Thank you so much, Connor, for joining me and for sharing all of this amazing information and all these amazing stories. Before we go, I guess if anyone is feeling inspired and wants to learn more about anything we've said, is there any links or anything they should go to check it out and find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. So please head on to the Chester Zoo website and find out a bit more about the work we do as an organisation. And you'll also be able to find things about the Youth Board, about the work that we've been doing. If you just search Youth Board on that website, that should bring those ones up. We will, if there's any ways for young people to get involved with the work that we're doing, we'll publish those on our Act for Wildlife social medias normally. So that's normally at Act for Wildlife on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook as well. So if there's any opportunities for young people to get involved and you want to try and engage with us, please feel free to do that and to find those on our socials. Or you can also drop us an email at our Youth Board email address, which is just youthboard@chesterzoo.org. And we're also always really, really keen to hear from people that want to engage with us and want to kind of advance youth boards, youth governance, and the youth voice across the sector. So please get in touch if you've got any ideas on ways that we can do that, or anything that you yourself want to set up, and we're more than happy to help.
Perfect. And in your theme of introducing me, that was Connor. No, I'm joking. I'll do a better outro now. I'll do and that was Discovery Learning Environment Education Learning Officer Presenter Connor, who's also on the Chester Zoo Youth Board, who's fantastic. Thank you so much, and I'll make sure to put links to all of that in the description for this episode. Also down there will be links to all of our social media. You can follow us at Pangolin Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and all sorts of other places. So feel free to reach us on all of those different things. You can also subscribe to the podcast on your streaming platforms of choice. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Anchor, all sorts of places. Make sure and click subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. I think in the next few weeks we will, if you didn't listen to the last episode, Connor is a big fan of tapirs, and you will be too, because I feel like next week we have a really great guest. We have, I don't know if I want to reveal it. I'll leave it as a surprise. I'm going to call her the Queen of Tapirs coming on the next show next week, so make sure to tune back in for that. You really don't want to miss out. And yes, I guess that kind of leaves, that's the end. We've done 2 hours. We've done all the recording. That's the end. And so thank you, listeners. Thank you, Connor. And yeah, see you all next time.
Thank you so much for having me, Jack. It's been an absolute pleasure, and goodbye.
Bye-bye. Perfect. Bye.